I'm Ken Rugg. I'm the Chief Product and Strategy Officer here with Enterprise DB, so welcome. Happy you can all make it. And I'm going to dig into some of the details of kind of the day-to-day activities. So how many of you in the audience, either you're a DBA or you have DBAs that work for you or you work with DBAs? Yeah, pretty much everybody. There's a lot of DBAs out there. I mean, it's a database conference, of course, right? So I go back to, with that, I go back to the, what Joe said earlier in his presentation about what is the cloud. And I'm going to talk about, the role of the DBA in the cloud. What is the cloud? Cause of gloom. So how many DBAs out there see the cloud as a cause of gloom? Oh, good. We've got optimists. That's great. But I think, it does change things. I think when you look at the cloud and the way the cloud is changing the world, the way it's shaping the way you do your job, it's going to change what you do on a day-to-day basis, and it's going to change the way you actually execute your role. Whenever we look at the world, the other thing I would say is it's not just the cloud that's changing your world, right? The cloud, one of the things that's really driving the cloud is the world of automation, because in the cloud that we're moving to a world where the things that you used to do on a day-to-day basis are now being automated. So it's the whole role, the whole function of the DBA is evolving, and it's being reshaped and reformed in the new era of computing. So let's go to first, a little bit of formatting challenge there. What's the classic role of the DBA, right? When you look at what DBAs have done in the past, it's been a lot of the kind of classic, how do you operate? How do you do upgrades? How do you do the basic system maintenance? Do backups and recovery, right? You do the upgrades of your database to the next generation. You do the monitoring, and you do the improving, you do the troubleshooting of the systems, and you go through that process. So, the DBA's role had a lot of very mechanical tasks. I think in the traditional role of the DBA, the traditional understanding of what a DBA does in the enterprise was something that was a fairly routine task, and there was a lot to do, no doubt about it. But in the world today, as we're moving beyond that, moving into a world of the cloud, of database as a service, and a world of DevOps and automation, we're moving beyond that. And I think the challenge for DBAs is to look at their role and see how they can change that and move into a world where they're bringing more value to the business and becoming more part of the business. If you look at where we've changed now, it used to be a world where you could have any database you want as long as it's Oracle. That used to be the world. It used to be everything was based on the corporate standard. We're going to have everybody doing the same thing. Well, that's changed, right? Now all the developers get the choice of what database is going to best fit their task and how they're going to use that. You go from a world of corporate data centers into the cloud. You move from traditional water flow methodologies into a more agile motion. All these things are changing the way people approach data and applications, and it's really changing from the world where in the past it was a lot of routine automation, a lot of routine repetitive tasks, into a world where now we're moving to a place where you can't just be the expert on the database, you have to be the expert on the data. One thing that hasn't changed, I think all of you who are raising your hands because you are DBAs, you have a lot of, the good news is you're going to still have a lot of opportunity out there, because we're still going to need a lot of DBAs in the world and a lot of people that are going to care and mind for these databases. There's still scrambled talent. People are still looking for skill sets because the level of skill and the things that you have to do as a DBA are growing, and the expectations keep growing. It's harder to find really people who can do all the things that are necessary in this new world. So let's look at the changing role of the DBA. Let's look at how we're actually changing the requirements and changing what they do. And I've got a number of different aspects where we see that role changing. First thing I say is you're moving from a database administrator to a data strategist, right? You're moving away, it's the definition of the term, database administrator, DBA. But you have to move away from that, take a step up, and say, what's the strategy for the data? What's the business reason that this data is being managed and organized and optimized to grow my business, to help the people on the business side of the equation? You know, you can move from a place where, you know, it was all the mundane tasks and all the repetitive tasks to one where you're doing, you know, looking at the governance of that data and making sure that the data is being used and having an impact on the overall health of your business. You know, you're moving from a world where you were the hardware tweaker. You know, if you were the person that went in and you know, tweaked the way the machine was configured, rebuilt the kernel, set the parameters. Well, now that you're moving into the cloud and using containers and using these new environments, you really have to become a master of these new technologies, because the way you have access to the resources that run your applications is being shaped by these new tools. You know, you need to know, you know, how does AWS IOPS perform relative to the Azure cloud? You know, is Azure going to give you a better performance in certain applications? You know, would you be better off looking at Google? You know, you want to know how to make those trade-offs and help your business know, you know, where you can better tune and better optimize the usage of these cloud platforms. You also want to know that you can take advantage of containers to better deploy. We see containers as being a really powerful tool for portability, whether you're going from on-premises to the cloud, and they give you the leverage where you can say, oh, this application workload may be better served on-premises. This other application workload may be better served in Google's cloud, or the other one maybe in Azure's cloud. You look at those trade-offs. Now you want to make sure that you can easily move from cloud environment to cloud environment. You don't want to just have to optimize and tweak at the very small and granular level. How do you get to each of those clouds? Containers give you a great way of creating a platform that's portable and a way of transporting those applications, even at the database level, to all these environments. You're moving from a schema indexer to a master modeler. You know, again, the old days, you know, I think you were looking at, okay, do I add an index? Do I remove an index? Do I normalize? Do I denormalize? You know, what's going to give me the best application performance for this application? Now there's just a whole lot more tools, and now there's a lot of different tools that maybe you're not even controlling. You know, your developers may be looking at situations where they're choosing a document database, or they may be looking at a situation where they're choosing a key value store for certain types of data. They may choose a polyglot approach to persistence, where they may be using several different data stores in the same application. I think that's really challenging. You know, again, you look at the world of you know, how do you ensure the data integrity in those environments? You know, we see, you know, at EDB and with Postgres, I think one of the great benefits of Postgres is its flexibility in terms of the data modeling to say, yeah, if you want a document store, we have one. If you want a relational database that's robust and has all the capabilities you want, yeah, you can use Postgres for that too. You want to store key value data? Yeah, not a problem, right? And I think that's a place where, you know, being able to actually partner with your developers to say, well, I understand that you have different data needs and that you want to be able to expand beyond what the capabilities of a traditional relational store would be. That's great. But maybe instead of saying we should move to a polyglot model, maybe it's moving to a multi-model database where maybe a single store for simplified administration, for the ability to manage that system, could provide the same value, provide the same optimization for this kind of diversity of data types, but within a more simplified administrative structure. And being able to work with the developers on those decisions, I think, is something that, you know, kind of falls to the next generation of database administrator. You're moving from being kind of the server jockey, the person who's making sure the servers are up on a day-to-day basis and making sure that you've got highly reliable systems to run your data set, to being a utility provider. And when I say this goes beyond just, you know, making sure that the cloud is on and you can connect to the cloud. It's actually thinking about things at a next level where you're saying, data now is a utility. That doesn't just mean it's always on. That means that when I need more capacity, I can spin up more machines. I can use a larger machine, larger capacity at the end of quarter when I'm doing large-scale analytics and reporting. It means I can use smaller machines, use fewer replicas, use different scaling techniques to really treat that as a utility. I'm giving my users a way of accessing capacity, and as the data, and again, at the application level, they may know how to do that. They may know at the application level, but then once you move into a world of data, of stateful systems like data, it gets a little harder. Knowing how you actually scale in a way that keeps your data integrity and keeps it highly available, you have to be able to account for that. And so therefore you have to think about it as being that utility provider and being the steward of delivering that data at whatever capacity your users want to consume it. Going from, in the old days, license gatekeeper, people, do I have enough Oracle licenses? Do I have enough cores to actually run this system? To being one where you're actually a budget owner. Again, this goes back very similar and closely associated with the comment I made about being the utility provider. There may be places where you want to think about the budget of the data management of this overall system and say, hey, I'm not meeting the capacity to do a certain workload. I need to be able to figure out how do I run that faster, because at the end of the quarter, at the end of the month, I'm kind of falling behind. Well, the cloud gives you new tools. Again, you can say, well, at the end of the quarter or end of the month, I could optimize, I could set up a 6-month project, spin up a development team to optimize the schema, optimize the database, do some sort of denormalization, dump it, load it. Awesome. How much did that cost you? Well, maybe at the end of the month, I just, increase the size of the instance that I'm using to run the workload for the weekend, and then I spin it down. Much cheaper approach, that solves your problem. Is it optimized? No. Do you care? It's one of these things where you have to kind of look at it and be pragmatic, be realistic about, kind of how do you think about the problem? The cloud gives you new tools. These are new tools in your toolbox, so therefore, it's a good idea to, kind of look and reinvest in, different ways of thinking about the problem. It's not just about how do you, take on a new project to optimize and try to tune and tweak. It's about thinking about the new flexibility that this new environment gives you to create scale. Another key thing is, kind of think about things moving from, the site admin, the person who's responsible for, the data and the data management and the coordination, to being really a platform broker. Right? This goes back to what I was saying about, thinking about the different cloud environments in which you're operating and on premises. Going from, and thinking about the different trade-offs in these environments. There's a lot of different opportunities to say, do I want to take advantage of database as a service? Do I want to cede control over, a lot of configuration? Let somebody else take care of that so I don't have to worry about it? Or should I really take really tight control? This is something where when you're looking at the application workloads, many workloads, if we're talking about a developer use case where developers are building new systems, they want to test them out, they want to try different things, go with the cheap route, go with the easy route. It can be a very low cost, very effective way of looking at the system. If you're looking at a system where it is a production workload and you want to really optimize it and get the most bang for your buck, optimize your budget, you may want to have something where you're either taking advantage of virtual machines and spinning up and configuring those things in the most optimized way, or even run it on premises. Again, thinking of it, this goes back to what we were saying about the containers strategy. Having an environment where you can have a very portable environment, move from one place to the other in a seamless way, and take advantage of different approaches to how your databases are configured, optimized, and set up. It gives you a better way of making that leap between these different environments. Going from a kind of query optimizer from the Performance Pro. So going from the state where you're really just tweaking the queries, again, and certainly there's going to be places where you're going to want to be able to control the queries and control how the queries are actually optimized and get into the details of that. But other cases, you're going to want to look at other tools that you have in your toolbox. I mentioned before, maybe you go to a different instance size. Maybe you go to a different instance type. Maybe you go from, memory optimized to storage optimized, depending on the workload, depending on the use case, and looking at ways that you can improve the performance of your system in a more holistic way, right? And not looking at just maybe the tools that you've used in the past. I think another key thing here is, is security. I mean, one of the things when Lauren was speaking about the journey to the cloud, and some of the biggest questions she sees are the questions around security and how do I secure this? And I think this also goes back to her observation as well, where it's not just about the security of the cloud. When people perceive their use of the cloud, they perceive the security question as being one of the biggest questions. But when they actually come to the pragmatic realities of the cloud, it's the governance. It's the how am I using that security. Amazon, Azure, Google, they have great infrastructure to provide security. They comply to pretty much any security standard, whether it's HIPAA, PCI, GDPR. You can conform to any of those standards with the public cloud infrastructure. They provide a great system to build upon. The challenge is are your users using that technology right? And I think, again, as we evolve the roles of the DBAs, you need to be that trusted partner for your developers. Many times what you see is the challenge with security in the cloud is not that S3 can't be secured. It's that the developer who uploaded all of your personally identifiable information to S3 buckets didn't put a proper password on the system, and he's not using the tools that are being provided by the system appropriately. So those are the things you have to look at and think about how you can come into compliance, how you can use the cloud in a way that meets the requirements of your system, meets the needs of your environment. Another key thing I think is in terms of looking at the change of the environment and the change towards DevOps. This has really changed the way people think about operations, and you're moving away from a world where it used to be just an operations center, where an operations support desk, or if you had a problem with your database, you knew how to call. It was the DBA, and it could be the middle of the night, and and they get it back up and running and get things back going for you. I think that's really, with the world of DevOps, that's really changed, because developers, and the DBAs and the entire operational staff are now in partnership. You're in an agile cycle. You're changing things as you go. You're looking at ways to improve things in an agile way, and just like all the other parts of the business in an agile motion, you working together. It's about agile teams. It's about how does the DBA work with the team, with the rest of the team in terms of building these things in an agile way. How do you iterate? It's not about a lot of times in the old world, you would maybe build a capacity plan and figure out how much hardware you're going to need, and then you roll that out and deploy that over the course of months. Well, no, you don't do that anymore. Again, this is why the cloud creates this more agile environment where you iterate with the development team. You understand how the requirements evolve as you go through that. You spin up databases that are necessary to support those workloads. You may decide that those workloads aren't actually important, and you terminate the whole thing and shut down those instances on the cloud. You've got that option now. So you have a different world that you're working in to optimize. And finally, you have to still keep everything has to keep running, right? You're still, at the end of the day, you may not be the only person who's on the hook to be called at the middle of the night, but you're still going to be called in the middle of the night when it doesn't work, if you've got a data challenge. So you're still responsible for ensuring that you have this fault tolerance, you have the scalability, you have the disaster recovery. All those things still are part of the solution. They still need to be solved, but in a different context, in a new in a new world. So what do you do about all that? So, okay, so there's a lot of, ways that you're changing your job, ways that you're changing the way you behave. You still have a lot of the same requirements. So what are some of the additional tools and things you can think about? I think one of the key aspects and key tools is actually database as a service. You can, and whether you're looking at the capabilities that we provide through Enterprise DB, or you look at the tools that are being provided by Amazon or Azure or any of the cloud service providers, it provides a really good platform for many of the use cases. Again, it's not going to necessarily be one size fits all, where every use case and every capability is going to be provided by a database platform as a service, but it does provide a lot of it. The self-service provisioning, it gives you very basic capabilities where your developers can push a button and gives them access, so they don't have to call you up each time a database needs to be provisioned. It in theory gives you infinite capacity because you can keep pushing that button. Goes back to being the budget owner. You don't want them to push the button to generate infinite capacity, of course. So you have to be able to manage that and control that. Being able to look at, are you deploying this into a multi-cloud environment? That's one of the challenges, I think, with database platform as a service is generally they are cloud specific. So again, this is something you want to look at in your environment and look at as a consideration and a trade-off that when you're looking at these environments. So with that, looking at what we do at Enterprise DB in that regard and looking at the capabilities that we're providing, we try to, again, this goes back to what Ed was saying earlier in his talk about having one Postgres everywhere and having the same Postgres, no matter whether you're talking about an on-premise environment, whether you're deploying it in a PaaS environment into the cloud, into a private cloud using containers, whether you're deploying as a database as a service into either a public cloud or a private cloud. I think one of the key things that we see is being able to know that the actual database environment is one that you're going to get a consistent experience and that your applications are going to get a consistent experience no matter where it's deployed, across all these environments. And that's really, you can go from an environment where you're just, provisioning the instances standalone, creating VMs, whether that's on premises or in the public cloud. You can use our EDB Arc to actually deploy into an Amazon, into a public cloud and operate that in that environment. Or taking advantage of fully managed DBaaS, and it's such as our environment for providing managed DBaaS or managed DBaaS from another service provider. You have those options. And I think, as you're looking at the trade-offs, those are all things that you want to consider. So that, it's when you look at, across the board where EDB is delivering this kind of capability, it's providing the experience, the portability, whether you're going from containers and across multiple environments, giving you the control that you need, giving you self-service capability, multi-model, the compatibility with Oracle, and really providing that at an enterprise grade. Being able to meet the requirements of your users, no matter what their environment needs. So with that.